Hey guys, TazzyPhe here. How is it going? I really apologize if the audio is bad. I did buy new audio equipment and I don't buy new equipment because, wow, the learning curve is just, whew, to the mountaintops, bro. And I don't want it anymore. So anyway, I apologize in advance if this audio sucks. For those of you who keep up with me on my socials, you probably already know that I recently made a trip to Saudi Arabia. I went to Jeddah, Medina, and Mecca. And fun fact, I was actually born in Riyadh. Does that make me Saudi Arabian? No, it doesn't. That's actually very hard for Americans to understand. I had this girl in high school. I explained to her, I was like, I was born in Saudi Arabia, but I'm not from Saudi Arabia. She's like, so you're Saudi Arabian? And I was like, no, I'm from Pakistan. She's like, but you're born in Saudi Arabia. And I was like, yeah, but I'm not from Saudi Arabia. It's not like the US where you just, here you go, citizenship, boom. And she was like, totally ignored me. And on my yearbook, she wrote, you're the coolest Saudi Arabian I know. That is one of the biggest microaggressions of my whole entire life. And no, she was actually not white. So let's just leave that there and let's move on, okay? The primary reason for my trip was to get in touch with my roots. Just kidding. No, it was not. I just explained to you. How many times do I have to explain this to you? The reason that I went is because I performed Umrah. For those of you who don't know what Umrah is, it is a non-mandatory pilgrimage. Hey, why don't you give some definition, Tasneem? Here you go. Okay. Wikipedia, hello. The Umrah is an Islamic pilgrimage to Mecca that can be undertaken at any time of year. In contrast to the Hajj, which has specific dates according to the Islamic lunar calendar. That was a lot of accents mixed in one. Welcome to America. Thank you. Now, before I left for my trip, of course, I watched YouTube videos, I watched TikToks, and most of what I saw was things like, here's how you perform Umrah, here's what you should pack. But there are some things that I personally wish that I knew before I went on my trip that I didn't see out there. So that's what this video is, and I hope that it's helpful to some of you guys out there. The first thing that I want to talk about is that you need to take care of yourself. Now, this is easier said than done. I will tell you that on day 4 or 5 of my trip, I got really sick, and unfortunately, it was the days that I was doing Umrah. That's when I had the peak of it. I eventually did lose my sense of taste and smell. I had a throat infection and I also was feverish and yeah, it was not good. So when you're traveling anywhere, there is a likelihood that you're going to get sick just because of what you're exposed to, because you're probably running on not your regular cycle of sleep. So there are preventative measures that you can take, of course, like what we learned during the pandemic, sanitizing, wearing a mask, all that kind of stuff. But in essence, just try your best to take care of yourself. I was taking magnesium, zinc, didn't help. I should have rested more. I was excited, I was trying to use some extra time, to go around and, I was just having a good time in Medina. And then
I can't go out. I'm sick.
Now, the next thing that I wish I knew, you need stamina. Now, there's 2 types of stamina that I'm talking about. One is physical, obviously. But yeah, I was having a real hard time. I was I walk all the time. I walk miles every week. It's not a big deal for me. I'm fit, whatever. No, this was different. This was hard for me. And it might have been because I was sick, but I don't think that's what it was. I was really unprepared for the amount of walking. When you're actually performing Umrah, when you are walking on the marble floors, I think they're marble, right? That's what they are. It really hurts after a while. So I don't know what you can do about that, but just be ready that when you go back to your hotel room, stretch your feet out, maybe take a spiky ball with you where you can release the tendons in your feet. Because that's something that nobody told me, that my feet were going to just cramp up from walking on the hard floor like that. Because not only do you do the tawaf, that was not the hard part on the feet. The part where, personally for me, where my feet really hurt was when we were doing the sa'i. The whole time I was thinking, I was like, wow, I am a little baby chicken over here. You're having a hard time on this marble floor that's flat. This was a mountain. Wiki. But I'm just letting you guys know because I know a lot of you out there are wikis like me. But that being said, there's another kind of stamina that exists, and that is religious stamina. Have you ever heard of it? Okay, let me explain what a religious stamina is. Okay, I was very impressed, mashallah, by my in-laws and many people who were there. Let me say like this, right? If you go to the gym every day, right, and you are consistent and you work hard at it, doing certain things is going to be easier for you than others because you do that. But I'm just very impressed by a lot of people who, mashallah, can just keep going. You know what I mean? They do all the extra. The Umrah trip, going to Medina, going to Mecca, it takes a level of religious stamina as well. So if you are planning to go, I would say start practicing and doing things before you go. Start trying to level up before you go on your trip so that when you get there, you're kind of at an elevated level. Does that make any sense to any of you guys? I don't know, but that's how I felt. Like I was kind of doing that because I've been like taking classes, like learn Quran and all that kind of stuff, and it's improved me, which did help. But yeah, like step up your game a little bit before you go. And I think it'll be, even more beneficial for you if you do that. So the next one, this is going to be for people who have trouble staying present. Okay, this is for you. For people who get overstimulated, have trouble staying in the moment, being present. If you're like me, I'm going to tell you that when you're in Mecca and you see the Kaaba for the first time, or you are going and doing your Umrah, Mecca is the kind of place that it's very overstimulating. It is a lot of people and it is a lot happening at once, and it is a lot to absorb. Especially, I think part of it is also, I have always been in environments where I don't live in a big city. Maybe this is different for people who live in a big city. I don't live in a big city in terms of like being, in big populations of people at all times, or walking on the street with a lot of people. So when you don't come from that environment, it's like a shock factor, right? I just wish that before I went out there, I just wish that I just like kind of took a moment, did some breathing, like, just really centered myself before I left the hotel, to help me like remain in the moment and not get distracted or overstimulated. So yeah, this might not apply to everybody, but this is just something if you're like me. The other thing that is a big thing that I wish that I knew before I went, and maybe people have said this in videos and maybe it just went over my head, it was one of those things that until you do it, you don't know. I was overthinking everything, okay? Like before I was going to do Umrah, I was like, oh my God, wait, I don't know the du'as. Can we buy a du'a book? Like, I don't know how to do anything. Like, I don't know, what are we doing? And, everyone was like, just calm down. Like, you'll know what to do when you get there, and like you'll hear other people also doing, and I was like, okay, like I was just like kind of freaking out, even though I had watched videos and all that kind of stuff. So it was like I felt like I was going before an exam, like just trying to cram everything in, right? And you know how that works. It doesn't work very well. But I will say, before I went in, I did read like an article or something that helped me. And it said something like, don't focus on like just making du'as or memorizing du'as that maybe you don't even know the meaning of, but to really just like try and ask for things from the heart and, whatever. So I just wish that like I didn't overthink it so much. I think it took me about like until the third tawaf until I was like, oh, okay, I got this. Like, like those first 3 tawaf, I was very, very lost. And I was very overwhelmed. And so I think if you don't overthink it and you center yourself and you're just like, you kind of like have this level of trust, it's not as complicated as you are making it. Like I think sometimes we overcomplicate things in our mind, especially if we have certain types of personalities like me. Yeah, I would say just don't overcomplicate it, or don't worry so much. Don't be like, so it'll be fine. SubhanAllah, like when you go, you really do feel like you're in sync with other people. Like it's just, you'll even hear other people making dua and you'll start repeating what they're saying, Speaking of dua, going off of that point, I want to say I wish that I had thought a little bit more about du'as that I wanted to make for myself. I did ask, a lot of my loved ones, like what they wanted me to make du'a for, and I made sure to keep that on my mind. But I feel like for myself, I don't think that I had thought through like very specific things. I think the things that I was asking for were kind of more general, and when I got back from my trip, I was like, oh, like why didn't I ask for this? Or why didn't I pray for this thing, And looking back, I mean, it's not really something like to make big regrets on, right? Like, because I can make dua anywhere at any time. But what I'm trying to get down to saying is that you should think about this before you go on your trip. Like, it's just good to be like reflective and really think through the things that you really want in your life or desire. And I'm not just talking like material things. I just mean like, what's important to you. And for me personally, like I was having a really hard time on my trip because a loved one of mine was very sick. And so that was kind of like at the forefront of my mind. So I was also kind of like a little bit distracted, and that was kind of just, and I think that's what was meant to be. I think it was meant for me to go on that trip and pray for that loved one, and for that to be like such a big part of how I was feeling while I was there. I don't regret it too much, but it's just something that if I was to advise somebody else, I would say, hey, like just think of, the things that you want to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for, and, also ask your loved ones what they want and that kind of thing. So anyway. So I'm not going to lie to you. This last one is a little bit of a negative one, but it's also positive. When you go to Mecca and Medina and you have this experience, listen, you are going to see really, really beautiful, positive, best of humanity. Okay. The things that make you like just feel like, wow, like just being a human, this being on this earth, like other people, like it's such an amazing experience, right? And like how grateful you are to be able to experience this. But on the other hand, I'm not gonna lie to you guys. You also see the worst of humanity as well. And I'm not trying to be negative, but I'm just preparing you. Okay. Like it's not all daisies and roses and sunshines and flowers. It's not. So what do I mean by that? You might find yourself in situations where there's a lot of pushing and shoving, not necessarily just like in your main areas, not necessarily in places like, you know, you don't have to worry about that when you're making tawaf. I'm not just talking about like a regular thing, but I had an experience where I went the roda, if I'm saying that right, or the chamber. And that was an intense experience. Like the way that people were pushing, and like, I was also like, why are people pushing? And then I found myself in situations where it's either push or be pushed. And, you know, all the cutting of the line. And then you find yourself like, I'm not going to lose the people that I'm with. So it was very intense. And I was kind of disappointed by some of the things that I saw. You see people acting like kind of crazy, like a little bit in certain situations. But I don't want to scare anybody. Like that's not the whole like experience. But it's not like every single person is nice and it's like amazing. You know, there's definitely moments where you're like, seriously, like you're doing this here, like in all of all the places on earth, like that this is where you're doing it. But on the other hand, like the positive aspect of, you know, seeing these parts of humanity is you get to see diversity. Like one thing that surprised me was like the makeup of the people. So like, for example, when I was in Medina, I saw so many people from Pakistan. I saw a lot of people, I don't know if they're from Pakistan and Afghanistan, but I saw a lot of people who look like they come from that area of the world. I saw a lot of people from like Indonesia, Malaysia. I saw a lot of people from like Uzbekistan, Central Asia. So, you know, it was really beautiful to see the diversity. And of course, you know, you see people from all over. There was this lady who asked me to take a picture with her. It had nothing to do with like YouTube channel or TazzyPhe, but it was like such a cute moment. She just like came, like someone was taking pictures of me and she asked me to take a picture of her, and then we just took a picture together. It was super cute. So now that I've told you guys like the things that I wish I knew, I'm just gonna give, for those of you who have come this far, just some random thoughts on my trip. One is I learned a lot about Saudi Arabia. Okay, I haven't been back for a long time. My parents' experience was quite a bit different than, you know, when I was telling my dad, I was like, dude, you wouldn't, I didn't say dude to my dad, but I was like, man, no, I didn't say man either. But I was like, Baba, you wouldn't believe it if I told you. Like, it's definitely changed. And, you know, you kind of saw bits and pieces of political stuff, like with conversations that you would have with local people. So it was just very insightful. And I don't know, when you travel, you just see how big the world is and how complicated and huge it is, and how you're just like a little teeny weeny, you know, little thing. So yeah, that was interesting. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So I hope that this helps any of you guys who are planning to go to Umrah. If you have gone and you agree with anything that I said, or you have some follow up, if you disagree with something that I said, just remember everybody has their own experience. Okay. But anyway, if you guys have any tips or tricks for anybody else, please leave comments in the comment section below. I appreciate you guys as always. I'm sorry I've been slow to get back, and it's probably going to be a slow return back into videos, but they are coming. So until they come, see you next time. Okay, TazzyPhe out. Bye. Bye bye.